All right, welcome people. Today I am excited because we are going to talk about inflammation. Okay, so most people think of inflammation as something you can feel, like a swollen ankle or a sore throat or heat around a cut. The kind of inflammation your body is doing exactly what it should, right? But there is a second kind of inflammation that researchers are paying very close attention to right now, and it doesn't cause obvious pain. It doesn't show up in a visible way, and most people walking around with it have absolutely no idea, right? It's called chronic low-grade inflammation. And the science on what it does to your biological age is really, really interesting, right? And so what's also interesting about this is that they've actually coined a term for this, and it's called inflammaging or inflammaging. I don't even know how to say it, but that doesn't matter, right? It's like inflammaging, right? And it's the idea that chronic silent inflammation isn't just an annoyance, it's a fundamental mechanism of aging itself, okay? And there was a study published in the journal Science that looked at thousands and thousands of participants and found that people with higher level of systemic inflammation were biological older than their actual chronological age, okay? So it measured across multiple organ systems using something called epigenetic clocks. Now, and there is the part that really stands out. Inflammation turned out to be a better predictor of mortality risk than either obesity or having multiple chronic diseases, right? So that's quite important, right? So it's not just a risk factor, it's a better predictor, okay? So why does this matter, okay? Because essentially chronic low-grade inflammation doesn't always show up. It's not obvious symptoms or anything like that. It can be driven by poor sleep, high stress, processed foods, UV exposure. If you don't exercise, you're very sedentary, or simply an antioxidant defense that isn't keeping pace with the demands of what's placed on our bodies at all time, right? And this is where a lot of well-intentioned people just kind of get stuck because they eat reasonably well. Maybe they take some supplements as well. Maybe they exercise, when they can, but they have no way of actually knowing whether what they're actually doing is working at a cellular level. Okay, so they might be feeling fine, but it's not maybe being completely protected for them. So what's actually going to help them then, right? I think one of the really, really important keys to this is where carotenoid antioxidants become really, really relevant, okay? So what are carotenoids? Carotenoids are classic compounds found in, very colorful fruits and vegetables, like let's say, for example, beta-carotene in carrots, tomatoes, you have lycopene, the red pigments there, maybe the deep green in spinach and kale and so on. So, but our bodies can't make these, right? We have to get them from either food or supplements. And research have found that carotenoids don't just act as general antioxidants, but they interact directly with inflammatory signaling pathways inside your cells, right? And specifically, they've been shown to block a molecule called nuclear factor kappa B, which is one of the key switches that triggers the production of inflammatory proteins, okay? So in plain language, we have carotenoids. They appear to help turn down the volume on this very inflammation pathways that researchers link to faster biological aging, right? So a cross-sectional study found that people with higher plasma carotenoid levels had significantly lower multiple inflammation markers, including CRP, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, okay? Now, this might sound like gook to many of you, but essentially what we're saying here is that eating lots and lots and lots of colorful fruits and vegetables is essentially going to help you to reduce inflammation, right? And actually, there's a randomized controlled trial that found that increasing the carotenoid-rich vegetables and fruit intake to around 8, okay, 8 servings per day over just 4 weeks led to measurable reductions in CRP, one of the most widely used markers of systemic inflammation, right? So let's be clear. This isn't, a treatment claim or anything like that. I don't want to come here and say, but we are saying that carotenoids are a dietary factor. It's not a drug, right? But consistency of the evidence across multiple study types is you just can't ignore it, right? You just got to look at all these studies and be like, hey, there's something here, right? Anyway, look at it this way, your immune system is working all the time in the background, right? Let's say it's like a security system that's running 24 hours a day, right? And the antioxidants, including the carotenoids, which are super important, are part of what keeps the system from misfiring and creating unnecessary noise, okay? And when the system is well supported, it handles the real threats. It keeps the inflammation appropriate and targeted and doesn't burn out your tissues in the process. When it's under supported, when you don't get enough, right, the background noise starts to increase, the cells start to age faster, the biological clock scientists use to measure aging run faster, right? So most people are somewhere in the middle. They're not like in the crisis mode, but they're not optimally protected either. But a lot of us want to be optimally protected, right? So this is where I find it super, super interesting because today we do have a technology that can measure this protection, right? It can measure to see if you have a low nutritional score or a high nutritional score. And what's so interesting with this as well is there was a recent study done at Stanford University where they looked at epigenetic changes for people with a high score compared to people with a low score, and they saw that there was a significant difference in gene expression for inflammation in your body with people who had high scores on this device, right? So we don't need to go and get blood tests. We don't need to do those tests. You just need to put your finger on this device 15 seconds to give you an incredible reading of your nutritional score, right? And so that's where I believe everybody should get this biomarker because it's so important. Because everybody wants to see, hey, how is that inflammation in the body going, right? This is not a medical device. It's not going to tell you whether you have inflammation or whatever else, right? But it still gives you that real objective data point that most people simply don't have access to most of the time, right? So I don't know. For me, it's a really, really important biomarker. I highly suggest for everybody to get their carotenoids antioxidants tested and to see if you're in the healthy range or not, right? But everything that research is showing is that there's a huge connection between antioxidant status and inflammation and biological aging. And so I think it's a really important information to have for all of us that care about our health and wellness and those around us, right? But if you do want to learn more about how this incredible device works, you know, there's more information in the description below, but you can just get in touch as well. And yeah, you can get yourself one of these incredible technologies to have in the homes to be able to scan you and your families and your loved ones and be able to start to make those changes that's going to help you in the long run. So that's it for today, but I hope that you found this a little bit useful. All right, cheers, everyone.